Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's launch event. On behalf of Newcastle University and Northumbria University, I would like to welcome you to this webinar, which marks the launch of the Centre for Digital Citizens. My name is Rachel Pattinson. I'm the Centre Manager for the Digital Citizens programme, and I'm hosting this afternoon's live session. As it's a live session, please bear with us, and if you need to drop out for a few moments to deal with working from home life, we totally understand. The Centre for Digital Citizens is a next stage digital economy research centre, funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, part of UK Research and Innovation. Between now and 3 p.m, you'll be hearing from a number of speakers. Firstly, our Centre Director, Professor Dave Kirk, will be giving an overview of the Digital Citizens programme. Then, we're delighted to have Chionwura MP with us as our special guest speaker. After that, you'll hear from our academic team leading our Citizen Challenge areas. And we'll finish with some words from another of our directorate members, Professor Abigail Durrant, about our approach to partnerships and collaborations and our plans for 2021. So just some housekeeping to begin with. If you'd like to ask us a question at any point during the event today, please use the Q&A function. My colleague Sarah is on hand to try and answer your questions, and I might pick some of them up via email after the session too. You can also use the chat function if you want to just make a comment or say hello. And we're recording this webinar so we can make it available on YouTube after the event today. So without further ado, let's start with our first speaker. Firstly, to give us an overview of the Centre for Digital Citizens programme, I'm delighted to welcome Professor David Kirk. Dave is the Director of Open Lab at Newcastle University, and he's also the Director of the Centre for Digital Citizens. So over to you, Dave.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Can we get the slides going? Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for coming along today to listen to us. It's with great pleasure that today I'm officially launching our Centre for Digital Citizens, and I'm happily talking on behalf of the other centre directors, Professor Pam Briggs of Northumbria University and Professor Abby Durrant of Newcastle University, and our many co-investigators. So our new centre is led from Newcastle University, but in fundamental partnership with Northumbria University, bringing together the two universities of this fine city. But also, I should note, we now have further spokes at Edinburgh University with Professor John Vines and University College London with Professor Mark Tudor-Jones. So if you'll indulge me, I thought I'd start by introducing a little bit about what the centre is, its mission, the challenges that it will be addressing, and how we're hoping to work to give you a better sense of the scope of the new centre and the kind of work that we will do. Next slide, please, Daniel. So our starting point is an awareness of two things. One, the unprecedented set of challenges that are currently besetting us as a society. Now, we find ourselves in the midst of a global pandemic. We're exploring the landscape of Brexit and what that might mean for the UK, and we're responding to an emerging climate crisis. So we have a backdrop of quite some change and challenge, but also ripe with opportunity to reflect on how we go about living our lives and organising our society. And this sits against two, a digital revolution, which is in the making, as new, smart, data-driven technologies become ever more ubiquitous and embedded in the world around us. And they become entwined with all of our activities. Now, many of you will have heard of the concept of the smart city, and I think every city now wants to be one, and it can be a bit of a nebulous concept, but it brings with it this idea of technology and data all around us, guiding how our city is run and how services are delivered, and it's often sold as a vision of progress and a key area in which we should be exploiting digital technology. However, when you look at these visions of the smart city, we often feel that a couple of key things are left out of this picture. The first and most obvious is the people. Who are the people who live in these spaces? Often very diverse communities of people with different ages, ethnicities, with different kinds of needs, expectations and goals, and with differing relationships to the idea of and status with regards to being a citizen. And importantly, with likely different interest in and access to technology. But how is the technology of these visions being designed to actually include these people? Does new technology run the risk of excluding and marginalizing people because of the way, for example, an algorithm that's running a service has been poorly designed? Many of you will remember the A-level issue last summer, which is a good example of how things can go wrong. The second area often left out of the smart city vision is the idea that not everyone does or even wants to live in a city. There is much less discussion of smart rural or smart coastal spaces. Now, here in the Northeast, we have one of the most rural and the least population dense counties in the UK, i.e. Northumberland. And we have a very large stretch of coastline with many coastal towns. And many of you will be aware of the challenges that come with living in and supporting these vibrant but frequently underserved communities. Why should these kinds of spaces not also be benefiting from the digital revolution? So rather than thinking about the design of smart cities as the vision of progress, we're much more inclined to think about designing to support smart citizens and what that might really mean. As a community of researchers here in Newcastle, we've been pushing an agenda for around 10 years to develop the idea of digital civics, the development of digital technologies to support civic engagement and community empowerment. What we want to do with this new centre is start working on how we can further support what gets called digital social innovation. We want to work with diverse communities to help them design, build and use new kinds of data-driven and collaborative technologies. Working with communities of stakeholders and partner organisations to explore how digital tech can support social innovation projects, empowering people in sustainable ways, using our expertise to develop technologies with, not for communities, to support them with new kinds of digital tools and services that make lives better. Our vision here is to leverage the significant potential of the Northeast within a global landscape to showcase digital innovation done the right way in ways which empower people. Next slide, please, Daniel. Through looking at the space, we have chosen to break our efforts down into 4 key areas, what we refer to as citizen challenge areas: the well citizen, the safe citizen, the connected citizen, and the ageless citizen. And some of my colleagues are going to be introducing each of these challenge areas in a little bit more depth in a few minutes. But what we hope to do within the centre is to bring to bear on these challenges 3 cross-cutting areas of particular strength and innovation that the universities can bring to the table, namely expertise in co-creation and design for social innovation, the design and development of what we call participatory platform technologies, which is basically technologies for bringing people together to collaborate and connect meaningfully around shared activities, and deep insight in the design and development of data-driven technologies, such as our world-leading Urban Observatory, which holds the UK's largest collection of urban sensor data, which is being collected across the Newcastle Gateshead area. Daniel, next slide, please. So how are we going to deliver on this vision? Well, the UKRI, and specifically the digital economy theme within that, and we must thank John Baird at the EPSRC, who runs the digital economy theme here, for the extensive support he's shown our group over many years. They have kindly provided us with a substantial investment of £3.8 million. This has then very generously been matched through reciprocal investment by both Newcastle and Northumbria universities and our network of partner organisations. And we're very conscious of the difficulty under the current financial climate of being able to do that. This allows us, though, to form a centre which will last for an initial 5 years. And it's allowed us to bring together investigators within the centre from diverse multidisciplinary backgrounds that you can see here on the slide. So we have quite a skill set to draw upon. And further to this, we're using the investment to hire a community of innovation fellows. So these innovation fellows will all be highly trained postdoctoral researchers who will, over 2-year engagements, lead and work on a number of pilot projects with key communities and networks of partner organisations to design and trial digital social innovations, with a view to developing further bigger collaborative projects or to forming social and commercial enterprises. Now, this will allow us to make best use of the innovations designed and, importantly, to do this in sustainable ways so that the work of the universities can actually transfer over to the communities we work with and then have a life beyond these pilot projects. We will, through the centre, also be developing a citizens' assembly, a community of non-academics who will help us to steer the work of the centre and who are going to help us engage in citizen labs, which are going to be ways of helping us to further explore the work that's being developed within specific projects and to look for opportunities between the projects to help maximise research and application of our work. And some of the earliest work we're going to be doing through March is to run some partner workshops to start discussing some of the key issues on the horizon for our partner organisations and the communities that they serve. Next slide, Daniel, thank you. So just to give you all a quick sense of our initial network of partners, you can see some names here on the slide, and hopefully we have representatives from a number of these organisations watching with us today. As you can see, we have a broad range of types of partners on the project. We have NGOs, third sector organisations, local government, business, education. We're currently covering a range of civically engaged organisations. Next slide, Daniel. So hopefully this gives you a quick sense of the scope of the centre and the spaces in which we're hoping to work and provide a contribution. And with that, I would now like to introduce our next speaker. So we're very lucky and honoured to have with us today Chi Onwurah, who has agreed to come and say a few words to help us launch the centre. Now, Chi is both the Labour Member of Parliament for Newcastle upon Tyne Central and, importantly, the Shadow Minister for Digital Science and Technology, which makes her doubly relevant today. So prior to her government work, Chi actually had a background in engineering and business and was formerly head of telecoms technology at Ofcom. And then since being in Parliament for what I think is nearly 11 years, Chi has held a portfolio through various shadow ministerial appointments, which have focused a lot of her work on digital innovation, science, technology, and industrial policy. And she has specific interests in cybersecurity, social entrepreneurship, civil contingency, open government, and transparency. So clearly, she has a number of areas of expertise which are of vital importance to the digital economy. So we're very lucky to have her as our local MP, and she's very well placed to pass comment on the content of what we're doing, as well as to help launch our Centre for Digital Citizens today. So thank you very much, Chi.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for that great introduction, and thanks for inviting me to say a few words. And I'm really, really sort of pleased and excited to be speaking at the Centre for Digital Citizens launch today. And I think as well as welcoming this initiative. I mean, I welcome this initiative for so many reasons. So I'm also very pleased to see the collaboration between Newcastle University and Northumbria University. My father went to Newcastle University and my mother went to Northumbria. So I myself am a collaboration, and it's very great to see that collaboration at the Centre for Digital Citizens. And I'd also welcome this hugely because it's so, it is so needed. Now, I am Shadow Minister for Digital. My last job was before coming into Parliament was with Ofcom. But before then, I spent 20 years working to roll out the networks that have all over the world that have become the internet, so the fixed mobile networks, which undersea cables even, which are now form the internet. And I did that. I am proud of the work I did because I believe that these technologies, the internet, the web, they are, as David sort of suggested, they are hugely enabling and empowering technologies. And the Labour Party, as a Labour Party member of Parliament, but we believe that technology can change lives for the better. And it already has. Separate families separated by oceans are now a video call away. News from across the world is available in a split second, though not necessarily in Australia at the moment. But anyway, discoveries and breakthroughs in public health enter the public sphere faster than ever before. And the pandemic has moved technology even closer to the heart of our working and domestic lives. The average UK adult now spends a quarter of their working life online, and we've all become accustomed to moving more of our lives online, and yet, you know, we have so few digital rights. And the events of the last year have highlighted the positive power of digital technology, but it's also brought into, I think, into better focus some of its downsides. And that's one of the reasons why Labour held a public consultation, Our Digital Future, last summer to engage with and talk to tech experts, civil society, entrepreneurs, third sector charity, and most importantly, some of constituents and members of the Labour Party on what the UK's digital future should look like, how we can counter digital threats and dangers, and understand how we can best give citizens control over their digital lives. And I think that's something that is really important to recognize, that the future doesn't just happen to us. We have choices that we can make about how technology is implemented and the impact, the social impact technology has. But we have to be in a position, our citizens have to be in a position of empowerment and information to make those choices, to help government make those choices. And so I believe very strongly that we have to enable people and businesses to go digital in a way which empowers them. And I was so glad that David used that word. And the pace of technology change and the impact on all our lives have left many people feeling disempowered, helpless, and overwhelmed. And again, you know, as an engineer, I've watched with some dismay the change in sort of my constituents' view of technology from sort of, you know, basically boring but useful to exciting but exploitative. And a recent report from .everyone highlighted that the British public are largely distrustful of technology. And so the best way to protect our digital citizens and rebuild that trust, you know, I believe is to deliver digital rights and a digital charter that puts citizens in control of their digital lives and puts them in control, for example, of the data which is collected and shared in ways that so many people are not able to follow or track. And so in the other issues such as I talk about algorithmic control, you know, more generally online harms, scams, the way in which data is used. We need regulation and a powerful regulator in place to enforce them. But we also need more and better education and understanding of those, you know, the digital rights that we need. And I think it's fantastic that Newcastle is playing such an important role of that. And few cities or areas in the country can claim a tech sector which is as vibrant as Newcastle's. Our digital economy is growing. It's the fastest growing outside of London. We've got a GVA of 1 billion, supporting over 20,000 jobs. And we are home to Sage, the UK's largest tech company and the only one on the to be quoted as stock, as well as having support networks and brilliant work spaces, including Campus North and the core. We have Ubisoft, we have the new BBC Tech Hub, and the highest proportion of STEM and computing students in the country. So we have great and growing digital infrastructure in terms of skills and in terms of tech startups. That's why we need to be leading in the digital civics. I want to champion our digital civics infrastructure. I visited the digital civics in Open Lab, which was fantastic. And it's also with the work they did in Fenham and elsewhere in the constituency and worked with them. I've visited the Centre for Knowledge, Innovation, Technology and Enterprise at Newcastle University Business School. as well as the urban observatory mentioned by David. The key message that I want to say here in terms of, and I look forward to hearing the discussion today, technology shouldn't be something that happens to people. It must be something that empowers people. And I'm so heartening to hear that that's at the core of what you're doing. And I want to do everything I can to support that and to make the UK a leader in digital civics, and to ensure that we have the civic infrastructure in place to protect, support, and empower our citizens, and particularly to ensure that the current sort of consultation and never-ending discussions and debate about online safety and online harms regulation, that gets to a place, get this government to a place where we reflect citizens' rights and protect them and enable and empower them in a way that supports the work of the Centre for Digital Civics. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chi. It's been brilliant to have you with us today, and we really appreciate all of your support and encouragement as we launch this centre, and we absolutely share your focus on citizens' rights. So let's move to the next part of our webinar this afternoon. So we're now going to be hearing from our citizen challenge areas, and we're hearing from all 4 of those in turn. So the safe citizen, the ageless citizen, the connected citizen, and the well citizen. So each of the challenge areas will be speaking for about 5 minutes to give you an insight into their research ideas and to let you know how to get in touch. So firstly, we're going to start off with the safe citizen. So I'd like to invite Northumbria University's Professor Pam Briggs, who along with Newcastle University's Professor Ard van Moorsel is leading our Safe Citizen Challenge area. And Pam is also one of the academic directors of the Centre for Digital Citizens. So Pam, over to you to tell us about the Safe Citizen.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you very much, Chi. That was a really splendid introduction, and also the focus on empowerment of citizens is something I'm very keen to pick up on here in my little presentation. So if I could have my slides, please. Okay, so I'm going to begin this talk on the Safe Citizen Challenge with the online harms white paper that came out in 2019. And in that, the quotes on the left really are taken from that white paper, where we see that the government wants the UK to be the safest place in the world to go online. But that paper also mentions so many harms where citizens become the victim rather than be empowered to take some control of their digital lives. So, for example, we see that illegal and unacceptable content and activity is widespread online. Disinformation is rife that can undermine so many of our democratic values and principles. But if we look at the little photo montage on the right, we just get another flavor of some of the different harms where people are victimized. So, is your data safe? Individuals and organizations can be hacked, and ransomware is growing very quickly. People do start to feel very mistrustful of systems. They're nervous that, they hear about hacks and they hear that personal data, that passwords are leaked, etc. And it's very easy in that kind of world of insecure accounts that people start to worry and start to lose trust. And one of the themes that we've been looking at in recent years in Northumbria is the idea that it becomes a very stressful thing to engage in online platforms of various kinds. And that sort of central issue there, banter or bullying, just adds to this, because for a number of years, I think we used to think about bullying as something, cyberbullying particularly, as something that affected children. And of course, it does affect children very badly. But we know that bullying doesn't stop as you get older. There have been some very recent cases of racism against footballers on Twitter that have hit the press in the last couple of weeks. There are plenty of cases, for instance, of bullying of women who get into the gaming community. And so throughout our lives, there are problems that we have to deal with there in terms of bullying. On the bottom row as well, we've got issues to do with algorithms and whether or not the algorithms are fair. There's a lot of interesting controversy around face recognition algorithms and whether or not the data that feeds into these algorithms truly reflects society. And, you know, we really have that sense that, you know, if the computer says no, that we would like to know a little bit more about that and about what the algorithms are that sit underneath it. And then the final photograph there, obviously people have financial concerns when they go online, and so many transactions now are digital. I mean, obviously the pandemic has exacerbated that, such that, you know, the contactless transactions are ubiquitous. But you know, there are a lot of scams that happen online, and one of the things we're really interested in the Centre for Digital Citizens are marginalised communities, or not just looking at you know, a kind of stereotypical citizen. So, for instance, older adults are the ones who are increasingly being targeted with romance scams, and that's something that you know, really we should look at more carefully. So, if I could have the next slide, please, Daniel. So in each of our citizen areas, and you'll see this from the other speakers as well, we've met and tried to scope out some areas of interest that are particularly interesting for us as an academic community. But one of the things we're now poised to do is to see whether these areas of interest are also of interest to non-academic partners in our communities. And so I'm going to just very briefly introduce these areas of interest, but these are works in progress. So we're definitely going to be revisiting these and exploring what are the issues at the heart of the citizen challenges. So the first, co-designing privacy and security technologies with diverse communities and for new settings. We hear a lot about new technologies. Blockchain is an example where, you know, the average citizen doesn't necessarily have a particular grasp about what that means. But when blockchain is used for identity management, us proving who we are, that we are who we say we are, then it starts to be quite an interesting technology, because communities could maybe use these technologies to move away from the data giants, the Facebook and Google, to provide more local platforms where they can share information safely, and they start to develop community-led digital platforms that can support each other safely. Understanding the social practices and dynamics of safe citizenship is an interesting issue for us, because quite often when we think about something like privacy, we think about the individual, and we think that you know, any kind of privacy violation takes place only at the individual level. But actually, social practices are really important there. And just for one example, think about a household. Now, it could be a household where you've got multiple families. It could be a household of friends. It could be a household that's, that has a number of Internet of Things devices, you know, or something simple like an Alexa. When we start to think about the household and the social network that lives in households and communities, you start to understand that privacy and security can be negotiated between people. And one example might be that, you know, within a household using something as simple as Alexa, that an awful lot of private data is stored there. And who controls which data gets released and which is protected? In terms of the third, responding to changing work practices, the pandemic has definitely seen a big change in the way we work. And with, I mean, this is a very good example. In a couple of years ago, we might have met in a room somewhere, but a lot of people now are adopting hybrid work practices or remote working practices, and they bring new challenges, because the security challenges, for instance, of an organization meet head to head with the challenges of an individual who's maybe got children who are using the same devices within the home, there are all sorts of ways in which we need to think about the safety and security of those remote workers. And so new challenges are emerging every day in that area. Upskilling communities, this is something she touched on when she was talking about the importance of education. And in safety and security terms, this is something that we have a history of working in across Newcastle and Northumbria. For instance, training our older adults to be cyber guardians, and that they can train each other to recognize threats and deal with threats and have the requisite skills. And so working with our partners to think of novel ways to upskill communities is key. And then finally, revealing the workings of technology. Everyone's familiar now with the idea of AI as something that's going to dominate our technological futures. But what does that mean in terms of our ability to challenge a decision that is made by a computer? So there are big issues there to do with ethics, to do with transparency of decision making, the transparency of algorithms, and the ability to interrogate those and improve accountability in those kind of black box algorithms. And then the next slide, please, is just simply to say that across the board in our challenge areas and the Centre for Digital Citizens, we're experienced in working with both academic and non-academic partners, and very keen to know about your own particular challenges to try and develop our thinking on this. And there, for example, there's my email and Ard van Moosel's email if you wanted to get in touch. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. And so next, we're going to be hearing about the Ageless Citizen Challenge area. So the Citizen Challenge area leads are Newcastle University's Dr. Ahmed Karutha, and from Northumbria University, Professor Jane Wallace. So Jane and Ahmed, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the Ageless Citizen.
Hello, thank you very much, Rachel. As Rachel just said, yep, Ahmed and I are leading on the Ageless Citizen Challenge. And now, what do we mean by ageless? Well, age may be a number. However, when we look more deeply, we can find that many of our ideas about age are influenced by cultural stereotypes or associations with particular notions of self and identity. And thinking about people as ageless shifts us away from this. And it may give us useful ways to think about how people naturally come together around topics and interests despite age differences. And we're hoping to undertake intergenerational projects, but again, we want to do more than just group people together because some of those people are older and some of those people are younger. So we're looking to create ways for people to come together around a range of reasons and to champion abilities at all ages. And we also want to challenge stereotypes of age, and the images on the slide that you're seeing at the moment are from a current initiative that we've launched as part of the Festival of Tomorrow. And search engines and stock photo libraries, they often either unrealistically present positive or unrealistically negative depictions of people in later life. And that helps to spread and perpetuate harmful stereotypes. And the reality here is that digital technologies pick up on this and often replicate and then magnify these. So what we're doing as part of the Festival of Tomorrow is that we're asking people to help us fight back against this kind of search engine bias by creating, then tagging and sharing more realistic images of growing up and growing older. So that's one example of the kinds of our way into this theme, and I'll hand over to Ahmed now to describe more of the areas of interest for this theme.
Thanks, Jane. So, and Rachel for the introduction. So as Jane just said, we aim to look beyond the chronological age. So in addition to social and even self-imposed stereotypes, we want to understand existing biases in digital technologies and systems. So our aim is to develop a non-stereotypical understanding and opportunities of learning, growth, and engagement across an entire lifespan. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So I'll briefly talk about like 3 areas of interest. So it doesn't actually match the slide as is, but I think it's a better way to talk about it. And these are the grouping of people according to spaces of common interest, life transitions, and support. So the first area of investigation is to consider grouping of people by spaces of common interest rather than age. We want to look at ways in which technology may support generations to work with one another and to see connections between people. We want to explore this through technology-mediated, co-creative research activities involving making, media creation, learning and training, and shared interests. Another area of interest is to develop a richer narrative of life transitions. So this can be in and out of work, starting and leaving education, and other transitions across a lifespan. We also want to look at how to support people across their lifespan. To do this, we need to understand how does support look like for a variety of groups, from children and young people to isolated carers to economically disadvantaged. And finally, from a technology standpoint, so the overarching thing common between all these is to see, we need to consider how our new developed understanding translates into technology design and how it can help us challenge embedded ageism in digital systems. Next slide, please. So if you want to help us challenge stereotypes based on chronological age, and if you are interested in supporting lifelong learning through co-creation engagements made possible with technologies, please do get in touch. And below you can see the emails of myself and Jane. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ahmed and Jane. So our third citizen challenge area is the connected citizen. And leading this challenge are from Northumbria University, Professor Sean Lawson, and from Newcastle University, Dr. Vasilis Vlachokyriakos. And Sean is here to tell us about their plans for the connected citizen. So I'm going to hand over to you, Sean.
Hi, thanks, Rachel. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, I'll give a brief presentation on the connected citizen area. I think today we can see issues surrounding connectedness and citizenship are really more important than ever. And to an extent, connectedness kind of underpins all of the areas in which we're focused on in the project. But really, we're really focused on, to paraphrase, kind of two things here within the connected citizen area. We're interested in the political, hence this slide here. And we're really interested in inequalities of connectedness as well. So we all know that COVID, Brexit, the current Australian Facebook news row, and also, who can forget here, of course, Trump, are only some of the recent national and world events, if Trump is an event, that continue to lay bare the challenges we face as a society around our digital connectedness, or our unequal connectedness, and the power struggles really that surround this. So our role as connected technology designers and developers, like we are actually at Newcastle and Northumbria universities, is therefore more important than ever. And we feel it's our responsibility to mitigate some of the societal injustices and inequalities that can be exacerbated often through technology. So within the Connected Citizen Challenge area, therefore, we're interested in exploring projects that open up access to truthful and reliable information and collective knowledge to all, with a focus on marginalized communities, inclusive design processes, and technologies to support equitable, well-informed participation. And next slide, please, Rachel. So these bullet points, like the slides from the previous presenters, signpost a little bit, in a little bit more detail, the topics with which we believe are important for this particular area. We want to bring people together and create the conditions for citizen-led generation, collection, and sense-making of data, and design and develop systems that open up participation by citizens in the co-production of public services. So as signposted on this slide, the current pandemic really has brought to the fore some of the inequalities of access to technology and internet connectivity, which are often forgotten even by those of us with a more critical eye actually towards technologies. Heightened, I think the last 12 months has heightened our awareness of some of these issues. So just to summarize again a little bit and to really emphasize this point, put another way, within the connected citizen area, we really want to focus on the political and on inequalities. And final slide, please, Rachel. So the connected citizen space is thus a broad one. It kind of underpins a lot of the other things we're interested in too. But these topics, we believe, are a good starting point for us to explore challenges and opportunities with interested partners around the connectedness of citizens. The Connected Citizen Challenge Area Workshop will take place on 25th of March, and we invite you to join us at that event in further discussing these challenges. And Rachel will give some more information around that towards the end of this hour this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And so we now have our final Citizen Challenge area, which is the Well Citizen. And the challenge area leads are Dr. Jan Smedink from Newcastle University and Professor Rob Wilson from Northumbria University. So welcome to both Jan and Rob, who will be telling us more about the Well Citizen Challenge.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. Yes, it's great to add to the challenge areas we've already heard about. So the Well Citizen, I think we can get the slide started with a nice background, is a challenge area where we really are recognizing that there are a lot of projects out there these days that are looking into digital and integrated health and social care service implementations and delivery. But we really want to take the opportunity we have with this center, also in connection to all the collaborators on it, to ask questions around how we can really make such technologies and services meaningful to people. How can we make them so that they really help us to live well, to lead to recognizable improvements in quality of life. And of course, and a really important aspect around it, as we've already heard from some other areas, but it is really crucial in the health space as the sensitivities are really heightened in many regards. Questions around data and how the data that is used in such systems can be considered valid and representative. And here, what I mean primarily is not just from a scientific point of view, that's important, of course, but more so what it really means to people and how they can have a role in determining what's relevant. Also, understanding trust in digital health service providers and processes is a really crucial point. And we will bring in contemporary focus topics such as social isolation. If we can look at the next slide, then we can see a couple of areas of interest that we're starting to map out more as signposts as to where we might be headed and where we might hope to collaborate with you on. So we mentioned here exploring personal health data use, as already referred to, and we can bring in a lot of interesting background on this from other projects that have already been going on. For example, the Intuit project. And then we have sustaining community-based action on health as a really important factor. When you relate this to what Dave said earlier with this shift from smart cities to smart citizens, right? We're very much thinking about rural communities as well, and how in such settings we can really hope to improve localized resilience. If you want to link that to the current stresses we're seeing in a pandemic situation exerted on healthcare systems and the service recipients, really oftentimes seeing radical reductions, how can we improve local health and well-being oriented activities? At the same time, addressing health inequalities and looking into digital support to care practices. So we're taking a view here not just on sort of traditional outcome-oriented reactive treatment, but really on trying to work with stakeholders from the start to develop approaches to digitally informed and supported proactive health and well-being measures. Yes, so if we go to the next slide. Of course, we have our academic team here already working on this. So that includes myself and Rob Wilson as team leads, and Caroline Klaas, Abby Durrant, Kath Exley, Mark Tudor-Jones, and Carl Montague as academic partners for the time being, or the academic team for the time being. And you can see here some partner organizations we're already happy to have on the stream, but we are really looking for you, trying to get you interested in the challenge area. And if you are, then reach out or join us at the upcoming partner workshop that we're having on March 31st. So we're really looking for additional stakeholders, communities, and we also recognize that we have a lot of local and beyond research centers and other collaborative projects that we're always interested in seeking common aims and objectives with as well. That said, just want to briefly hand over to Rob to say hello as well and add to this.
Hello, thanks Jan. I have the great honour of speaking last in this section, so there's not much I can add to what everyone's already said. But I just wanted to say something about the context of the organisational change that digital has led to in the last few years. So, and particularly in the recent period, where a lot of digital has been sort of accelerated for some, but it has become an object of digital divide for others. And this means that what we're doing in this project is very much a moral endeavour, and we need to think about how we help citizens manage some of the disruption that comes with the changes that have been happening. And that is in particular the gap between, if you like, the official health services and the sort of the rest of the world that we live in terms of our own care and well-being, and how to sort of join some of that stuff up a little bit better. So I will stop there, because again, the joy of speaking last means that you will run out of time the quickest. And I'll hand over to Rachel.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks, Jan, too. Okay, so that's all 4 of our Citizen Challenge areas. And we're coming to our final speaker for this afternoon, Professor Abby Durrant. Abby is a Professor of Interaction Design at Newcastle University, and she's also one of the Centre Directors. And she's going to be talking to us about our approaches to partnership engagement and our plans for 2021. Abby.
Thanks, Rachel, and hello, everyone. Yes, I'm just going to say a few words about how we plan to engage our external partners with the Centre, very much building on what Rachel and Dave have already said. So I think a key thing to say is that the ethos of the Centre is for the researchers to be guided through a rich dialogue with external partners about what research priorities and areas are important to investigate. And the key aim is that research projects are co-created and co-produced with our partners. And another key aim is for us to connect to groups of citizens, representatives of populations who are linked to or impacted by the research. Dave mentioned citizen labs, and we aim for the CDC to act as a catalyst in 2 key ways. First of all, to bring people together, echoing what Sean said. So researchers at our 2 universities brought together with partners and citizen representatives to co-define and pursue research that matters, and also to establish partnerships for making funding bids that envision long-term research programs and sustainable social enterprises. So this is the aspiration. Yeah, Daniel, could you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. As people have mentioned already, in March next month, we're running partner workshops, each one focusing on each of the Citizen Challenge areas. And these will provide an introduction to each of the challenge areas, supporting introductions, finding connections, shared interests, and identifying key research priorities and questions to pursue through potential partnerships. So the Safe Citizen workshop takes place on the 11th of March, Ageless Citizen on the 16th of March, the Connected Citizen on the 25th of March, and the Well Citizen on the 31st of March. And then next slide, please, Daniel. Thank you. And actually, we do plan to hold more engagement events, including a citizen and partners forum. So this would convene representatives from partner organizations and as Dave mentioned, the citizen assembly members to assess and reflect on the progress and direction of the centre research and on its delivery. And then going forwards, a forum like this will aim to meet about twice a year for the lifetime of the centre, hopefully also providing a platform for networking and knowledge exchange. And in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges and opportunities of online interaction, considerations of inclusion and exclusion, these gain new significance for what we endeavour to be a participatory programme for research engagement. And picking up on what Rob just said, you know, in many ways you can see this as in some ways a moral endeavour and certainly a socio-political one. And this motivates us actually to listen, to be open-minded as a large team of people, and to try and collectively pioneer new tools and new configurations of technology for delivering meaningful impact. And I'm now going to pass back to Rachel, who is the key contact for partner inquiries and also for following up if anyone is interested to participate in one of the or more of the stakeholder workshops that are coming up this spring. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Abby. And so yes, now we're coming to the close of this afternoon's launch event. And firstly, I would like to thank all of our speakers, and particularly our special guest speaker, Chionwura MP. And I'd also like to thank Daniel, Paul and Sarah, who've been helping behind the scenes today. And thank you too for joining us online for our launch event. It's been great to have you with us, and I really hope that you're as excited about the work of the Centre for Digital Citizens as we are. And if you are, I'd welcome you to contact me. As the Centre Manager, I'm one of the key contacts for partners, and you can email me at rachel.pattinson@newcastle.ac.uk. My email address will also be on the slides in a little while. So I'd love to hear your ideas, or if you want to get involved in the March partner workshops or hear about our news and events, I'm the person to contact. And so finally, if you want some more information about the Centre, you can visit us online at digitalcitizens.uk or follow us on Twitter at openlab_NCL. And thank you all for attending. Goodbye.